In the 1950s, the Soviet Union introduced the Tu-104, a sleek jetliner meant to rival Western aviation. Faster, more powerful, and a symbol of Soviet ingenuity, it was the pride of the USSR. But the Tu-104's story is one of ambition and tragedy. A rushed design, bizarre mid-air incidents, and fatal crashes defined its legacy. This is the story of the Tu-104, an aircraft that reshaped Soviet aviation while exposing the dangers of pioneering jet travel. The Soviet aviation problem. Narration. By the early 1950s, commercial aviation in the West was taking off, literally. The British de Havilland Comet, the world's first jetliner, was a game changer. But in the Soviet Union, air travel was stuck in the past. Flights were slow, noisy, and uncomfortable. Flying across the vast country from Moscow to Vladivostok took 50 hours and 6 refueling stops. The USSR needed a modern jetliner to compete, and aircraft designer Andrei Tupolev had an idea. A jetliner from a bomber. Narration. Rather than start from scratch, Tupolev proposed adapting the Tu-16 bomber into a jetliner. This shortcut would save time and resources. He widened the bomber's fuselage to fit passengers, reused its wings and engines, and kept military-grade components for durability. The result? The Tu-104, a heavy, robust jetliner that could carry more passengers than the British Comet. Development took just 3 years, and in 1955, the Tu-104 made its first flight. Narration. Timing was on the Soviet side. The Comet had been grounded after tragic crashes, making the Tu-104 the world's only operational jetliner. The USSR used it as a propaganda tool, showcasing the jetliner on state visits and international air shows. Crowds marveled at its sleek design, and the Tu-104 became a symbol of Soviet technological prowess. But behind the fanfare, problems were brewing. Narration. Pilots quickly realized the Tu-104 wasn't easy to fly. Its heavy controls and bomber-derived design made landings difficult. High speeds were needed to avoid stalling, and stopping often required a parachute because of weak brakes. Then in 1958, things took a deadly turn. Tu-104s began experiencing bizarre incidents. One was caught in turbulence, causing both engines to fail. Another was hurled to 44,000 feet before stalling and crashing. The cause? Updrafts combined with the jetliner's rearward center of gravity, a design flaw from its bomber origins. Pilots were often helpless as their planes pitched upward uncontrollably. Narration. Investigators eventually introduced modifications to address the issue, but not before over 140 lives were lost. Even with fixes, the Tu-104 was prone to accidents. Runway overshoots, mechanical failures, and design flaws plagued its reputation. Nearly 1 in 5 Tu-104s built was destroyed in accidents, making it one of the most dangerous jetliners ever. The problem was, Soviet leadership saw jets as unreliable, fuel-thirsty, and expensive, an excess better left to greedy Western capitalists. What's more, the Comet had taken the better part of 10 years and millions to develop, time and resources Soviet leaders weren't eager to invest. But knowing this, Tupolev had a plan. He promised top Soviet brass that he could build them a jetliner in just 3 years. A reliable jetliner with even more passenger capacity than the Comet, built at a fraction of the cost. What's more, a Soviet-designed jetliner would prove to the world that the Soviet Union was every bit as advanced as the West. It was an offer they couldn't refuse. But how do you build a state-of-the-art jetliner like the Comet in just 3 years? You start with a massive shortcut. This is the Tu-16 bomber, built to rain havoc over Europe and for Tupolev the basis of his new jetliner. Having just finished designing it for the Soviet Air Force, Tupolev figured he was already halfway there. He'd just need to widen the fuselage, but he could keep the engines, even if they weren't the most efficient and a little loud. He could also reuse the wings. Although better suited for high-speed bombing runs, it would save engineering time. The pilots might just have to land a little faster. Narration. Despite its flaws, the Tu-104 played a critical role in modernizing Soviet aviation. It spurred infrastructure upgrades, improved air traffic control, and paved the way for future Soviet jetliners. Like the British Comet, the Tu-104 demonstrated both the promise and peril of early jet travel. It was a gamble, but one that pushed the boundaries of aviation. One narration. The Tu-104 may not be remembered as a perfect aircraft, but it was a crucial step in the evolution of air travel. With correction. Thanks for watching. For more stories like this, check out my latest video on the Northrop B-2 Spirit, available now on Nebula.